Rolex is one of the most luxurious brands in the world today, valued at around $8 billion. Its story goes back over 100 years, starting with an orphaned teenager whose inheritance was stolen from him. With nothing but determination, he left his hometown and moved to another country. After working hard for years, he chose to follow his passion and started a watchmaking business. What he didn't know then was that this decision would lead him to revolutionize the wristwatch industry and build a billion-dollar empire. Hans Wilsdorf was born in Kulmbach, Germany, on March 22, 1881, to parents Anna and Johann Daniel Wilsdorf. He was the second of 3 children. His family ran a successful iron goods business, placing them in the middle class. Sadly, his mother became sick and died in 1892. A year later, his father also passed away, leaving Hans an orphan at the age of 12. His uncles, from his mother's side, took custody of him and his siblings. They sold the family business and used part of the money for the children's education, enrolling them in a prestigious boarding school in Coburg, Germany. At first, Hans disliked this decision and felt very unhappy. He was treated as an outsider at the school and teased because of his religion. To cope with these tough times, he focused deeply on his studies. Later in life, he admitted that, although he didn't like the choice his uncles made, it taught him to be self-reliant and careful with his belongings, which he believed played a big part in his success. Hans loved reading and was a bright student, especially excelling in mathematics and languages, learning both French and English. He was curious about traveling and believed languages would be helpful in his career. And he was right. During school, he became friends with a Swiss boy who told him stories about his hometown, La Chaux-de-Fonds in Switzerland, a place famous for its watchmaking industry. Hans became very interested in visiting. Eventually, Hans left boarding school and moved to Geneva, Switzerland at the age of 19. He got a job as an apprentice at an international pearl exporting company. The company didn't make anything itself but made good money by sorting and selling pearls to jewelers. Hans paid close attention to how the business worked and was earning decent money for his age. One day, he got a letter from his friend offering him a job at a well-known watchmaking company called Cuno Corten. Cuno Corten was one of the top watch businesses at the time, exporting watches worth about 1 million Swiss francs each year. They even made some of their own watches from scratch. This company was based in La Chaux-de-Fonds, the city Hans had always wanted to visit. Even though his current job was better financially, his curiosity led him to take the offer in 1900. He was hired as an English correspondent and clerk, thanks to the English he had learned at school, earning 80 Swiss francs a month. He was also responsible for winding and checking hundreds of pocket watches daily. Through this work, he gained deep knowledge of watchmaking and how different watches were built. However, after only 2 years, his time there ended as he had to return to Germany to serve in the army. After his military service at 22 years old, Hans moved to London, England, to work for another high-quality watch company. There, he took on a bigger role, focusing on growing the company's sales. Over the 2 years he worked there, he successfully increased their customer base and improved their sales. By then, he was already dreaming of starting his own watch business and was learning everything he could. During those years, he met his future wife, Florence Frances May Crotty, and they married soon after. One day, Hans sat outside with his older brother-in-law, Alfred James Davis, and shared his plans for the future. Hans felt ready to open his own watch business but needed some starting money. Alfred, knowing Hans's passion and drive, believed in him and decided to invest in his venture. In 1905, they shook hands and founded Wilsdorf and Davis Limited, which would later become Rolex. They partnered with a Swiss watch company, Hermann Egler, and began importing Swiss movements to England to assemble in their watch cases. They also opened an office in Biel, Switzerland, to support this partnership. Soon, they were focusing on selling quality watches at affordable prices. Hans loved watches, but there was one thing about the industry he didn't like: pocket watches. At the time, wristwatches were mostly worn by women as jewelry and were not very reliable in keeping time. Pocket watches were considered more accurate and masculine. But Hans found pocket watches inconvenient, especially when he had to use both hands and still check the time. He believed wristwatches could be improved to become precise and practical for everyday use. In his own words, "My personal opinion is that pocket watches will almost completely disappear, and that wristwatches will replace them definitely." Hans Wilsdorf, 1914. Determined, Hans spent the next few years traveling across Europe, meeting watchmakers and learning every detail about watches. He began releasing his own wristwatches, improving their quality and reliability step by step. By 1908, his company was becoming one of the leading watch firms in England. Hans wanted a name for the company that sounded luxurious, was easy to pronounce in any language, and was short enough to fit on a watch dial. After much thought, he came up with the name Rolex and registered it as a trademark in 1908. Rolex quickly gained a reputation for high-quality wristwatches, and many wealthy people started wearing them. When World War I broke out, many businesses struggled, but not Rolex. Soldiers preferred Rolex wristwatches over pocket watches for their ease of use and accuracy in coordinating attacks. By then, the company had grown to employ 60 people and had large offices in London. Rolex had already earned the first-ever wristwatch chronometer rating from Switzerland and a Class A certificate of precision from London's Kew Observatory, major achievements that built trust in the brand. However, in 1914, the British government imposed a 33% tax on exported goods, which worried Hans. To avoid these taxes and to be closer to Swiss watchmakers, he moved Rolex's headquarters to Biel, Switzerland. Hans Wilsdorf's journey was marked by challenges and determination. In the early 1900s, his company, originally named Wilsdorf and Davis Limited, faced a wave of skepticism, particularly because of his German roots. This led him to rebrand the company in 1915, adopting the name Rolex Watch Corporation Limited, a decision that would change the course of horology history. A few years later, in 1919, Rolex moved its headquarters from Bienne to Geneva, a city renowned for its watchmaking legacy. The company continued producing watch movements in Bienne and then transported them to Geneva, where they were carefully tested for accuracy and finished with exceptional designs. It was in Geneva where Hans and his team focused on improving the technical innovation of wristwatches. Their goal was to create a watch case that could withstand elements like dust, water, heat, and cold, securing the accuracy of Rolex watches for years to come. In 1926, Rolex introduced a groundbreaking model, the Rolex Oyster, the first ever waterproof wristwatch. With its tightly sealed case, it provided optimal protection for the delicate inner mechanisms, making it water-resistant. Hans knew this, was revolutionary, but he bided his time, waiting for the right moment to unveil the Oyster to the world. That moment came in 1927, when Hans learned about Mercedes Gleitze, a London swimmer who attempted to cross the English Channel. Despite doubts surrounding her abilities, Hans saw an opportunity and convinced Mercedes to wear the Rolex Oyster. while attempting the swim. Though she didn't fully succeed in crossing the channel, after 10 hours in the cold water, the Rolex Oyster emerged in perfect condition. The publicity surrounding her swim catapulted the watch into the global spotlight. Hans capitalized on this success, placing advertisements in the London Daily Mail and using creative marketing tactics such as displaying Rolex watches inside fish bowls at stores. As the years went on, Hans continued to leverage publicity to promote Rolex. In 1931, Rolex introduced the Oyster Perpetual, the world's first waterproof and self-winding wristwatch, eliminating the need for manual winding, a feature that had long eluded watchmakers. Despite the company's success, Hans still faced obstacles. During World War II, the company struggled with high export costs and geopolitical tensions, and Hans also suffered personal tragedy with the passing of his wife in 1944. In her memory, he established the Wilsdorf Foundation, a charity that would later come to own Rolex entirely. This ensured that Rolex would never go public, and the company's profits would be reinvested into charitable causes. After the war, Rolex rebounded dramatically. By 1947, the company had sold its 100,000th certified chronometer, an incredible feat considering the certifications began only 2 decades earlier. Rolex continued to innovate, introducing the date just. In 1945, the first wristwatch to display both the date and day of the week, followed by the day-date model in 1956, which further cemented Rolex's status as a leader in luxury timepieces. In 1953, Rolex introduced the Submariner, the first waterproof watch capable of withstanding deep-sea pressures up to 100 meters, further establishing Rolex as the go-to brand for durable and luxurious watches. After Hans's passing in 1960, Rolex began shifting its focus more toward luxury, positioning itself as a brand for high society. In 1985, Rolex became the first to use 904L steel, a highly durable material that further solidified its status as an exclusive and expensive brand. Today, Rolex remains the most recognizable luxury watch brand in the world. Hans Wilsdorf, from humble beginnings, transformed the watchmaking industry and created a lasting legacy that can be seen on the wrists of countless people worldwide. His dedication to innovation, design, and precision continues to define the brand today,